Welcome to a Homegrown Family Podcast, where we grow the produce and the kids. Hey everybody, welcome to a Homegrown Family Podcast. Here we are again. My name is Joe Metler and I'm your host. And today we are talking about the homeschooling perspective of the working dad. And if you listen to previous episodes, you'll be familiar with the name, drum roll, Vince. How you doing, Vince?
I'm back again.
So, those of you who voted the number 1 stars, trying to get him to come back, here it didn't work again.
It doesn't matter what you think. We're going to post it anyway.
Yep. So, when I think of homeschooling, and I feel like this is pretty general for most people, I feel like most people envision one of the parents, primarily the dad, that works outside the home, which leaves the mother or the mom as the default homeschooler or the primary educator of their kids, the homemaker and the sorts. And that's also kind of my, preconceived notion of what homeschooling would look like. And not that that's how I want it to be, but this is kind of some of the stuff we're going to delve in today. So thank you all for listening. And here we go. So it's probably just instinctual to some degree that the mother becomes the primary educator, because as in an early state in life, when the kids are 0 to 2 years old, they really rely on their mother for nutrients and nourishment, and that's kind of just humanity and how it works, right? And so the next further step would be, okay, well, if the mother had to step back for maternity leave, she could step away from her job more easily than the father. And so then it just kind of progresses into hey, let's have my wife be the one that stays home and takes care of the kids while having more children, perhaps, while educating. This kind of goes on and on and on, right? It's a little snowball effect. But that's probably, my interpretation in a way too. And the wife and the mother ends up being the primary educator. And so today we're going to give a little perspective on the dads that perhaps work more often times than not, work outside the home. There's probably some families out there, and I know of some that, both parents, either work part-time and then tag team homeschooling components of things. Like, for example, my aunts and uncle, they own a chiropractic business, and they're both chiropractors. I'm not sure exactly how it works out, but I'm sure one works like Monday through Wednesday, and then the other works Thursday, Friday. And so they're able to kind of manage their business while also helping in different components. I'm sure each of those days of the week look a little different depending on who's home and who's doing the homeschooling and things like that. In this episode, I got my friend Vince here, and we're going to talk about the balance between work and homeschooling life from a dad's perspective. Now, keep in mind that I'm not currently homeschooling any of my kids. I only have one. My wife, Nora, she goes to work, and she's also going to school for family nurse practitioner. And I currently work, and that leaves, my child going to daycare. Now, we're pretty fortunate that Nora works, a PT type schedule, a part-time type schedule, where she's home a couple days of the week. And early on in the first year of our child's life, we were able to schedule daycare only on those days that she worked, so she is home 50% of the time. So that wasn't too bad. Kind of, give or take here and there, right?
Nurture versus nature, right? So we talk about that, and just before the podcast began, right? You kind of mentioned how, it kind of seems natural for the mom, right? The woman to take that nurturing role on. So then the nature side is the man, right? We want to, as we mentioned in our first episode we did together, right? Be a man. You talked about that. We need the adventure, right? So one of the ways that we provide adventure is we provide for our wives. We provide for our families, our daughters and our sons. So when we take that, mindset into this episode here, so when I think about homeschooling, like you, I've always thought it's a certain way, right? It's only the mom, like the dad shouldn't be involved. He's out farming in my case, right? Or he's out going to a job 8 to 5, as you'd mentioned. But mine is a little different. Mine's a little bit unique. I get the ability and the chance to both be at home and be away from the home, sometimes simultaneously. So,
feel free to elaborate on that, Vince. We'll mention quick, I think it's important that those parents that do work 8 to 5 or that are not home during the homeschooling process per se, that when they do come home, that they be completely present for their kids. Yeah, and if you're in a homesteading type situation, you work 8 to 5, and you think, oh, well, now it's 5 o'clock, I gotta get home, I gotta milk the cow, I gotta weed and garden, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And you want to make sure that when you get home, you take that, at least that first initial 5 to 15 minutes, half hour, to really say, hey, I'm excited to be here with you kids, right? And allow them to say, hey, I'm excited to see you, Dad. And, take that half hour or whatever it is, because that means the world to them, right? And so one thing that I think my wife and I do pretty well, even though we currently both work, is that we are pretty present with our kids during the hours in which they're at home. And, we tend to avoid screens. We try to keep our phones in our pockets, and we try to keep the TV off. Now, that's not to say that I'm 100% no screens, no TV. There's times when we turn on Cocoa Melon while we're putting lotion all over her body because her eczema's acting up, just so that way she, kind of make it happen. There's times when we allow TV, like on a movie Friday night, we allow TV, sick days, when we're sick and we're groggy and she's not feeling good, we'll turn on the Jungle Book, and if I have to listen to Bare Necessities one more time, but that National Geographic, kids just love watching the animals. There's no harm in that. There's, seeing the natural process of animals give birth, eat other animals, teaches little lessons in life that they might not know about yet, but it also keeps the junk from this world from entering their small brains.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Joe. I love the way you said that. Be present for your kids when you're there. Yeah, that's absolutely important. And I don't do it perfectly. I absolutely don't.
Yeah, me neither.
There are times where I'm not always the perfect parent. So.
Oh, just today, Nora says to me, she goes, you know what our daughter said today? I'm like, what? Well, she was asking, hey, Mommy, watch TVs? Watch The Dancing Bear? Referring to the Jungle Book. And Mommy says, no, we don't need to watch TVs today. Oh, okay. Daddy and I will watch when Mommy's out of the house.
Throwing you under the bus.
She totally did. It's not even 3 yet, and I'm getting tossed under the bus.
Yep.
I was like, what?
Yeah, kids are so honest. That's the beauty of it, too, the purity that they have. There's almost no filter, and that's what makes it just so funny.
I'm like, Nora, we don't watch TV that much, okay? I know we
Mom's
don't.
gone, woohoo!
I know. I was like, wow. I give her props to say not to, tantrum and throw a fit, because Mom said no. So I'll give her credit for that. She's a smart kid. I think a key to that is my wife reads my kids a lot of books. Constantly. My daughter probably goes through 10 books at least a day.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, every night before bed, gets home, she reads a book or two, and then before bed, she reads another 2 or 3 books, and it's like, yeah, she's probably smarter than I was when I was that age, for sure. I was out there playing with rocks and sticks.
Exactly. We were in the mud. Yep. We were wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. So, Vince, we kind of mentioned, your situation. Why don't you go ahead and keep on elaborating on that? What kind of does your situation look like?
Yeah. So I'm very blessed and very fortunate. I hold 2 full-time jobs. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I farm full-time with my dad. I also have a crop insurance as an adjuster. I work for Agrisampo. So I get to work from home a lot of times, especially during the non-busy seasons of the farm. So with that perspective, I get to be home a lot when my wife homeschools. And kind of the typical routine is, we wake up, we've got chores, we eat breakfast, and then we kind of get into school. And sometimes I'll take the younger kids away so that my wife can focus on the older kids so that she gives them that undivided attention. Sometimes it's the opposite way, right? Where they just only want mom, the younger kids. So then maybe I'll step in for math, and then my wife Anita, she'll then come back in when the littler kids are satisfied with the time they've had with her. So it's being able to be flexible. I say flexible is a huge word that I like to throw into this. Is that sometimes I'm working on the computer and I'm hearing a lot of crying going on in the background, and I have to stop what I'm doing, work, and I go out and I say, hey, how can I help you, hon? What can I do to step in here as somebody who is working at home to help with this chaos, right? Because it's controlled chaos some days. And my wife and I, we have 5 children aging from 10 to 3. So we have a 4th grader, we have a 2nd grader, we have a 1st grader, and arguably a kindergartner. And then we have a preschooler. So every one of those is a different different set of skills that it takes to be able to homeschool. And I'm always amazed and in awe at my wife, how she could do that. Now keep in mind, she was publicly schooled. I was publicly schooled. She's a certified teacher from K to 12, right? So she's got a lot of educational experience. But when you start dealing with so many different variables when it comes to how many different kids are being taught how many different things at way different times and at different levels, one of them is learning to read. One of them can read novels. Just the dynamics there is it's vast. So for her to be able to manage that, it just always amazes me. So it's a little bit about my situation. So when I'm home, I'm able to kind of step in as needed. There are definitely times and days, Joe, where I've got to say, all right, I need to lock the door. I need to be on this conference call. I've got this claim that is in the office. It needs to be paid right now. Like, I got to work on it. So not that I'm always there as needed for her as much as I should be, but definitely there are chances where I can step in. I can take a break. I can say, okay, I need to do this, but I'm going to step in now. And conversely, on the other side, when it's really busy during the claim season, Joe, I stay up till, sometimes midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., because I have to help out with everything that needs to be going on in the normal routine of our house to help get them to bed, to help them to brush their teeth. As you mentioned, reading the stories, praying with our kids, right? We try and do that every night. We go up and bless them. And then after that's done, spend a little time with Anita as much as I can. Some days I don't get as much as I'd like. Then I say, hey, I got to go to the computer. This has got to be done. This farmer has signed the claim. It needs to be submitted to the office. We have a deadline. We have 30 days from once the farmer signs to get that claim paid, or else we have to pay them interest.
Yeah, so Vince doesn't have a typical 8 to 5. But, if he takes 15 minutes in his day here to help out with the homeschooling or the family situation, he's got to add that 15 minutes on the end of his day, to make up for the difference and really to get his 8-hour day. I mean, your adjusting job isn't exactly an 8 to 5. It requires 8 hours a day, but as the demands come across, you got to, address them as they come.
Exactly. Yeah, there are days I work 1 hour, Joe, and there are days I probably work 18 hours.
And once you get into the farming component on top of it,
right?
Planting season, harvest season, those are easily 8+ hour days.
They're long days, Joe. 12 is a very common number, just in the field. You go from 6 to 6 or from 7 to 9. I mean, you get a lot more hours in than a guy thinks.
One of these days, if you need an extra hand, you just give me a call and I can see if I can run a combine for you.
Depends. Do I have to pay you?
Yeah, not just for a day.
We can talk about it.
You're paying me your time for being on my podcast right now.
I'm grateful to be here, Joe. Thank you again.
So, talked a little bit about how you balance your father role with, assisting in the homeschooling. Your time is flexible, so that's a unique situation, and it's a little different than a father who works from 8 to 5 and comes back home. We talked a little bit about how it's important to be present for those kids when you do come home, especially when you're gone all day.
Yeah.
Do you find it challenging? And maybe this is just a general father question, because I have family and friends in my life where my nieces and nephews or kids of my friends are really mother dependent, and I can understand that, for the first few years of their life, right? I mean, the whole nurture thing, right?
Yes.
But once they get to a certain point, I feel like it could be that the father or the person that's not home all the time, not being there for homeschooling point of things, and that's not around all the time, right? To be emotionally on the same page as your children. Do you find that to be challenging sometimes? Yeah,
and every child, I think you did a good job of kind of paraphrasing that for setting me up on this question, because each child is unique. Right? Each child will learn at a different rate. Each child has special needs, right? Each child that has been taught this or that understands it differently. Sometimes you have to teach a child once. Sometimes you have to teach them 10,000 times, right? There's a broad spectrum of being able to connect emotionally. How is this child learning? How can we interact with that child, right? And I should have started with this, Joe. I apologize, but we're very passionate about homeschooling, right? One of the reasons why we want to homeschool is because we can have the most influence on our kids. We can take the time to spend individual sessions on what they have interest in. In school, Joe, for me, as we talked kind of before, it was you did your work, you shuffled it off. You did your work, you shuffled it off. You did your work, you shuffled it off. Now we have the chance and the ability that, hey, my kids really like dinosaurs. They really like fossils. They really like geodes, right? They really want to learn about the sea. They really like animals. Whatever it may be, we could go to the library. We could rent a whole section out on this, and we could spend extra time on it.
And cultivate their special interests.
Yes. Yeah. And then we really get to see that person individually. So when you talk about emotions, it's really important to be able to kind of draw that out of them, because God has put in each of us, Joe, a special gift, right? And it's our job as parents to help cultivate that gift. It's our job as parents to help raise that child up so that we can say, okay, these are your interests. Maybe you've got a calling to do this.
Yeah. And then that's kind of like the whole balance between being the educator and being the parent, right? And so they have to have that ability to be able to cultivate certain areas. You're not like, as the educator or the parent, sometimes you want to be like, hey, no, focus on your homework. Do your math.
Yes.
And this kid's like, but I love dinosaurs. In your example,
Right.
So to be able to say, hey, okay, and have that flexibility to say, okay, let's culture this. In turn, this child sees, hey, my dad is letting me learn more about dinosaurs, which I'm super excited about. It helps build that parental bond. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and one of the things I'd probably say that we do on a regular basis, my boys, we have 4 boys and 1 girl. That's our spectrum there. And the 4 boys and I, we love to wrestle. So we'll get on the floor and we'll just kind of grapple a little bit, and I still win, so.
That's funny.
It'd be a few years before they take me down.
And the homeschooling, it starts before homeschooling age. I mean, ultimately it's called being a parent, right? And so there are certain things that we do between the ages of 0 and 4 that you try to teach your kids. You read your kids books, you try to teach them manners. Teach them, hey, no, we're praying every day before we go to bed and things like that, and so forth. And you mentioned wrestling. So I only have the one, so I got to wrestle, right? Because I'm a dad. You got to have some kind of adventure, right?
Yep.
And so that adventure for me is parenthood. At this point in time, and I just have the one, so we wrestle. And my daughter wrestles like a boy. Like. It's just hilarious because I'll be sitting there laying on the couch and I'm kind of throwing her around. You'd think you'd throw around a girl, like, ooh, yay. And then she'll walk up to me, walk on my stomach, and just flat out sit on my face.
Oh, yeah.
She'll sit on my face and be like, can you see? Can you see? I'm like, no, I can't. And he's like, oh, why? You're sitting on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then other times, I'm like laying on we played for a little while and then she's done. Go do something else and I'm just sitting on the floor, laying on the floor, stretching it out or whatever. And she'll walk past. Next thing I know, I'm getting like the curb stomp, just like my face. Just like, wow.
Yes.
And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my younger boys, he still hasn't quite got the whole wrestling idea down. And I'll be wrestling with maybe 2 or 3 on this side. And he'll just come just flying in and jump on me. And like, yep, wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I gotta say, okay, enough's enough, boys. Like, I've had enough. This was a low blow.
Yep. Yeah, no kidding. And then when they turn around and start trying to wrestle with your wife, then Nora's like, holy cow. Like, where are you learning this,
That's right.
Okay. She's like, no. You wrestle with daddy.
That's right. And there it goes back to the nurture and nature, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of going back to the dad component, what are some things that you as a father, specifically as a father, and why you're choosing homeschooling versus public schooling?
I mean, there's so many different reasons, Joe, that we could get into on that. I don't know where to start, but I think I'll keep it simple. You heard the KISS principle? Keep it simple, stupid.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I'll keep it simple, right? Because that's the way I work. I'm a simple person. I mean, the main reason is we want to be the biggest influencers in their lives. Right? We want them to spend the most time with us so that we can form them in the ways that we think they need to be formed. You were publicly schooled. I was publicly schooled. Both of our wives were publicly schooled. We have nothing against the public school, right? Other than that we want to be the biggest influencers in our kids' lives. Mm-hmm. We want to shape them in the ways that they can go out and to be productive, contributing members of society. Think of it like this, Joe, right? You become what you eat, right? If you eat junk food all day, you're probably not going to be fit. You're probably not going to be healthy. You probably won't live long. And again, I'm stereotyping. I'm not saying you can't do it. I know people who have smoked for 90 years, right? I mean, there's outliers like that. But same on the other side, we have this, okay, we're in school, right, with other kids who are the same age, who are dealing with parents that both work, right? So it's more like a daycare at that point. It's more of a government school program that they have to be conditioned to whatever the government says. And we don't want that, right? We want to try and avoid that. We want them to be independent thinkers. When you go to public school, a lot of times you don't come out thinking independently. You become very conditionalized to say this is the answer, right? 2 + 2 = 4 every time. You can do imaginary numbers; it can equal whatever you want. When you talk about trigonometry, geometry, and our good buddy Sloan, he can tell you all about that. Sometime you have to have him on here. So one of the reasons that we love homeschooling is that we get to be the biggest influencers.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember listening to another podcast, or I remember reading here recently, and maybe this isn't really exactly related to homeschooling, but the dads have so much power. Not only spiritually, Father's blessing is one of the best things and most powerful things. But also our daughters look, especially daughters, really look for your father's acceptance, looks to the father's approval. And so I think as much as a father can be home and interactive, and whether you're working or not, that is a huge factor on, their upbringing. If they don't get your acceptance and your approval, they're going to find it elsewhere, And so
exactly,
homeschooling does provide a greater amount of incidences of which you can impact your children, right?
Yes.
To, find the best spouse that they can find.
Right.
Or teach them what kind of, actually, one of the things that I read recently is that, they always say, be the type of man that you want your children to marry, right? Which is good, wouldn't you say, Vince?
Absolutely, yeah.
But you add to that, and shouldn't you be saying, I want my daughter to marry the man who they think Jesus is?
Yeah, it's even better.
Exactly. So, we can be good and good people and show an example of what a good man is. But as men of faith, we also want to say, hey, this is what Christ is, and get that personal relationship, with Christ, and teach your daughters that that's who the type of man we want to be.
Right.
Because I'm fall short.
Yes.
I'm sinful. I've sinned, and I am not a perfect person. And if that's the type of person I want my daughter to be with, that's kind of low-hanging fruit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not to be too down on myself, but it's low-hanging fruit. There's fruit that's definitely fallen on the ground and rotten and the pigs ate. There's definitely that out there.
Yep.
But do I want to get her to have the low-hanging fruit? It's kind of on the inside of the tree. No, I want her to get up to the apple top of the tree where the sun's been shining on it, and it's red all the way around that apple. That's the kind of apple I want my daughter to want, and that's the one that's like Jesus.
Yes, amen. And I'm going to share a little story that kind of segues into that when you talked about daughters. So we've got one daughter, as I mentioned. She was 5 years old. We kind of just been remodeling our house. We kind of got a new kitchen, and we were able to kind of take out some walls and redo some drywall and add some counter space that we hadn't had in our home in the past. And I remember one day, for whatever reason, I guess I was just thinking about my daughter growing up and getting married, and we had a little tea date. So my wife was boiling water. As I was talking to our daughter about this, it just kind of dawned on me that one day she's going to grow up and she's probably going to get married. She's got beautiful motherly instincts now already at 5 years old when we had our house remodeled, our kitchen specifically. So as I'm sitting there drinking this tea with her, I kind of looked at her and I said, Amelia, one day there's going to be a man that comes in here. And she immediately stops me and says, and fix our windows? And I said, I couldn't help but just laugh and smile at her and say, yes, honey, that's exactly what's going to happen. Someday a man is going to come in here and fix our windows. Because I was thinking about long term how that, pretty soon, man, my daughter's going to be gone. She's going to be off in the world. And it's true what they say, that the days go by slow, but the years fly by.
Someone just told me that this week.
It's providential. It is 100% true.
Yeah.
The days go by slow, but the years fly by.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Kind of segue here into something else I was kind of thinking about. And that tea party, is kind of one example of something that you do to help to foster strong bonds with your child. But, we're kind of trying to focus on the homeschooling dad, the working dad. Like, what types of things could they do, like tea parties and things that they could help to foster that bond with their children that their mother, who's been with them all day, might not be able to do. Like, what kind of things would be practical for my listeners saying, hey, the dad that's listening to this podcast, I was gone 8 to 5. I've got a laundry list of things to do when I get home. But what can I do to help foster that bond with my child?
Yeah, first and foremost, connect with your wife, right? Ask her what she needs help with the most, right? So is it this? Is it that? Is it maybe something that's not related to homeschooling, right? So is it something that's involved in the house? Hey, I've been with the kids for 8 hours while you were gone. What happened is that I've created a bunch of dishes that need to be done. I've made a mess in the kitchen, right? So then the husband, the father, steps in as the nature guy and provides.
Yeah.
He cleans.
So first thing is selflessness.
Yeah.
Right? You get home, you have your laundry list of things to do, but you turn around and say, my wife, what do you need right now?
Right.
Because ultimately, the best thing that you can do to provide for your family and your kids, to show a strong bond with your kids, is to show a strong bond with your wife.
Woo!
Yeah.
Amen.
I mean, man, cultivate that strong bond with your wife, and your kids are going to know what an example it is to have a strong marriage.
Yes.
Right?
And that is the goal, right? Of why the kids need to see the parents on the same page. So whatever your wife thinks that you could help in and step in if you've been working away from 8 to 5, I get a little more interaction, so it's a more immediate response where it doesn't have to wait so long before it could be addressed or fixed in my case. But in general, not always am I there, at the house, but during the winter months I'm around more often. So during those times I say, hey, what can I do to help out? And it's sometimes just to take the kids outside. Sometimes she just needs a break. Sometimes it's to do the dishes or to make a meal, which it's pretty limited for me what I can make, but it's to make a meal. It's to step in. Okay, how can I serve you? And then whatever you have left at the end of the day, you get to yourself. So like you said, it's self-denial.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. We can look at that as bad, right? Well, our world pushes us to say, it's all about you. It's all about what you want. You can do this. You can do that. We really actually need to take a step back and say, no, it's not.
And say the two became one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's an ongoing purification, right? I am not perfect. I have days when I come home and, I worked all day. My planter broke down 10 times. I'm covered in fertilizer. I'm stinky. I'm sweaty. Like, I just want to go to bed. Well, sometimes there are things that need to be done before you go to bed. And those are the things that, when you talk about a homeschool perspective of a dad is those are the things that your wife has sacrificed all day for you. So you need to really understand where they're coming from too. It's really hard to be with the screaming 3-year-old every day.
Yeah.
For going on weeks and weeks a week.
Yeah, and there's days where Nora doesn't work, my wife, and she might say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to keep Sophie home. I don't have a huge workload. My school load's not too bad. And she'll just stay home. And I get home and I'm like, dishes aren't done. Garbage isn't taken out. I thought she was going to vacuum this floor today. And the first thing I do is start complaining. I catch myself coming home. I mean, I do the whole, hey, how are you? Kiss, hug, and say hi to my kid. But then right after that, it's just like complaining. And maybe it's due to the workload at work or something else, but that's something that I know I need to get better at, is be more of a positive vibe after the initial, 5 to 15 minute.
Yes.
Being present. Yeah, I'd be present after that and be more aware and that type of thing. But yeah. What type of things, Vince, are you looking forward to in teaching your kids homeschooling wise? I know you mentioned that you kind of like, I teach my kids maybe a little bit more math, or you help focus on certain things like dinosaurs or things like that. But is there certain things that you're looking forward to that you can teach them that is kind of dad specific?
Yep. So one of the things that I like to do, and my oldest is becoming, he will be 10 in May. So, we're just kind of starting to enter the age where they could really start stepping up and helping each other out. So what I really like to do is be on the farm, to be able to drive the tractors around, to be able to give them a lesson on, hey, this is the first step in you learning some of these things that I learned when I was your age. And some of those include like woodworking. My dad has always done woodworking when I was a kid. I kind of picked up a little bit on that, but for the last, I'd probably say, a few years, I've kind of dovetailed and shifted gears a little bit, more focused on them. But now my son is kind of picked up some whittling. So as he's picked up some whittling, I thought, oh wow, like this is a great segue to get into woodworking. But with a lot of the woodworking tools, Joe, they're very dangerous. You got a table saw, you got a jigsaw, you got you got a router. You've got so many different things like drills and screws and nails and hammers, and you just got to be careful when you think about those things. About well, how am I going to teach him this, right? Really passionate about hunting like you. You know, my dad, when they were 1 year old, got them guns. You know,
wow.
they can't use that. You know, it's a single shot 22, but regardless of it, they can't use it at that point. Yeah. And now, you know, they know that they have it. And my 10-year-old, it's like, okay, took him out last year a little bit, took my 8-year-old out last year a little bit, took my 6-year-old up. You know, it's like, that's the limit, you know, like you got to have an age. And it's like, okay, only when I'm present, only when I'm around can you use this with me. So I'm really excited about teaching them stuff like that I learned when I was their age. And then like you had mentioned, a little bit about dinosaurs, like what do they like to do? As I mentioned, you know, we have 4 boys, and these 4 boys, they're all outdoorsy. They all want to be outside. They all want to share.
Teach them how to whittle a fire and stuff?
There you go. Haven't done it yet, but that'd be good.
Teach them what weeds are edible and cook a soup out in the
yard? Yes, and we have done that.
Yes, nice.
Yes, we have. Lamb's quarters, right?
Yeah, yep.
It's like lettuce. Spinach.
Lamb's quarters, purslane, dandelion.
Yep.
Pretty much make a stew out of that.
Pretty much everything, every weed out there. Broadleaf plantain. It's a medicinal herb. I mean, you could go on and on about all these different weeds.
Did you know that if I think I read one time that yarrow?
Yes.
Pretty common, I think, in the western North Dakota. You know, probably where you're at, you probably see it.
Yep.
And yarrow, if you get a mosquito bite and you rub it all over your arm on the mosquito bite, it's supposed to help it from swelling and itching and stuff.
And broadleaf plantain, same thing. You put it in your mouth, you chew it till it's basically like almost like cud.
Yeah.
And you put it on a cut or a wound, it helps heal it.
Huh. I don't know if I heard that one. Nice. There you go. The one little bit of information that you guys learned today. No.
Apply it yourselves. Try it.
Yeah. Well, I just got to share this story because it'll probably never come up in another podcast. We're talking about edible plants, right? I was doing an internship with the NRCS one summer, and we're driving around, and this guy's pointing out these different things. Oh, you know what that is? I'm like, yeah, I think it's prairie coneflower. I think, yeah. Or echinacea, yeah, prairie coneflower, same thing. And he's like, yeah, did you know that if you eat the roots, it can make your mouth numb? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah. So we stop a truck and we pull over and we take a little bit of this root out and he kind of, you know, whittles it down so that way it gets the dirt edge of the roots off and puts it in mouth chews on it. And I put my mouth chew on. Next thing I know, I'm like, my mouth is just like drooling, you know, I'm practically drooling.
Wow.
As we're both like drooling, his phone rings. He goes, oh crap, it's my boss. So he answers it and he's like, hi, how you doing? Yeah. Sucking up his slobber. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking more forward to getting into the future where they could do more independently. That I can show them this is the way that it should be done. And when we do it this way, this is what I expect. I expect you to treat this tool with respect. I expect you to honor what I've told you. And then that applies to life, right?
So, yeah, so kind of moving on to another topic within this discussion is, so as a father or as a parent of a homeschooler, have you gotten any, like, you know, part of the whole thing about being a father is they're the protector, right? And so have you gotten any, like, negative feedback from anybody? Like, why are you homeschooling your kids? They should really socialize and do their own thing or whatever. You know, have you gotten any situations specifically where you've had to, like, buck up and be like, no, we're homeschooling my kids because X, Y, and Z, you know?
Actually, no, Joe. I've been pretty fortunate that most of the people that I talk to or that I know are kind of along the same lines or under the same, you know, understanding as me. You know, every once in a while, I will come across a coworker of mine as, hey, you know, what's that in the background? Oh, these are my kids, and I homeschool. You homeschool? Why would you ever do that? And then I just simply explain to him, like I told you earlier, right? I want to be the most important person in their life. And the one way that I can do that is to be with them all the time. So the way that I can be with them all the time is to homeschool. So it kind of goes hand in hand when it kind of comes like that. I have heard other people say, yeah, like, why are you homeschooling? Boy, they're going to be socially awkward. Mm-hmm. But I would throw the question out to you. Have you ever met an awkward kid in school? Absolutely. You just get them. It's the personality of the child, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that in a joking sense, but like from reality, from a standpoint, right? A lot of kids are shy.
Yep.
A lot of kids have reservations. They don't know how to talk to a parent, even those that have been publicly schooled. So those that are homeschooled, they can have the same problems at the public schools.
Yeah, and they probably more often than not at homeschooling, I feel like could actually probably talk to adults more so because they're used to talking to adults constantly and having that teacher interaction. Whereas, you know, it's like a 1-to-5 ratio versus public school, you're looking at like 1-to-15 or 1-to-25 or 30.
Right.
So,
like, my kids don't spend 8 hours a day with other 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds. They spend 8 hours a day with a 2-year-old, with a 3-year-old, with a 6-year-old, with a mom and a dad, maybe an aunt and uncle, maybe a cousin, a brother, a grandpa, a grandma. They're interacting with people all the time. And we get plenty of socialization. We do tons of things, whether it be extracurricular sports or co-ops, or whether it be swimming, music, as we were talking earlier. Hey, this is something that I really want the kids to do, is be in music lessons. They have to be able to learn to talk to an adult, right? Because very rarely do you find kids that teach kids. Usually a parent.
Yep. Do you have any like long-term goals, aspirations for your children? Do you feel like there's any cap to their potential since they're homeschooled?
That's a really good question, Joe. And to be honest with you, I probably haven't thought as much as I should about it. But definitely the top 2 or 3 things that I could think of off the top of my head is, yes, I want them to be faith-filled. I want them to have a center of where they know where their self-worth comes from. I want them to have the experiences and knowledge that public school kids do. So would that be field trips? That be going and checking out different activities that are offered, right? Whether that be through sports or through other local organizations that are sponsoring them. And I really want them to, just truly find something they're passionate about. And the way that you find that out, Joe, is you give them a feast of education, right? You don't just say, this is what we're going to do. No, like, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? If they have that feast of education, they're going to find their niche. I was talking to a dad the other day. He said, look, and they homeschool. We've never pushed anything on our kids, he said. He said, they've found their own niches. One is in gymnastics. One likes baking bread. One likes aeronautics, right? Learning about space and aircrafts and the sea.
But I mean, you got to say, hey, I know you like that stuff, but we got to do your math.
Yes.
So, I mean, you do have to put the thumb down once in a while. And
reading, writing, arithmetic, yes. You have to say, hey, this is important, this is cool, I love what you're doing, but you still got to know how to make 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
You got to. There's no way around it.
Just kind of wrapping up here a little bit. What type of advice would you give someone, I guess like myself, who's not homeschooling any of my kids or anything yet, but are thinking about it? What type of advice would you give them?
First comes to mind, Joe, don't be afraid to step out into the deep, right? There were so many times that my wife and I would talk, hey, we don't know if this curriculum is right, because just like school, they follow a curriculum, we follow a curriculum. So we would try a curriculum and be like, gosh, this wasn't really right for us. We need to look at something else. Okay, we'd try another one. Gosh, I really like this, but I don't like that. Gee, then we'd try a third one. Okay, this seems to fit us, except for that. So don't be afraid to try multiple different curriculums. Don't be afraid to try it, step out into the deep, right? So in other words, take that leap of faith. Say, yep, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try that. If that doesn't work, I'm going to try this. And my wife is really good at being flexible like that, Joe, that she can tailor the program, right? Maybe we'll pull a history lesson from here. Maybe we'll pull a math lesson from here. Maybe we'll pull a little bit of science from here. Maybe the reading books will come from there, right? So they're getting the broad spectrum, but it's not just one set curriculum. I think that you can do your own research. You can see what maybe would fit your own family's needs, because everyone is different. We know people who are dyslexic. That is a whole new ballgame than what we are at right now. They have to be able to be very flexible. So be flexible with the approach. Don't be afraid to step out. Be flexible. Try something. If it doesn't work, don't think that you're a failure, but yet that it's just another stepping stone for finding what will work for your family.
No, that's good advice. And we're going to get you and your wife on here in a podcast in another day, in another episode.
That'd be great.
Because I'm sure as the primary educator, she's going to have a lot of input, and it's going to be awesome. But I do want to touch base real quick. The same type of question, but roll it around to, what are like 2 things that you do on a daily basis, or like that you say are key in the development of faith of your children?
First and foremost is praying. Before meals, before bedtime, throughout the day. If they see you make the sign of the cross, right? As you mentioned, we are Catholic. Hey, what did you do that for, Dad? Well, I was praying for so-and-so and such and such. I thought about them. Or, hey, I just got a text or a phone call saying somebody is in the hospital. Let's pray for them. And taking just an actual pause to realize that, yes, this is important. Yes, we are human beings who care for others, right? Like Christ did for us, we should do to others. So that's the first. The second is you had mentioned it kind of just briefly, is blessings. Every night we bless our children. I mean, there are days that, I'm on the road, I don't get in till I'm late. There are days I'm farming, I come home, I'm tired, I don't always go up there. But by and large, we try and bless our children each night. we say the Angel of Guardian prayer, St. Michael prayer. That's helped out tremendously.
Yeah, we do those same 2 prayers before bed, and then usually Hail Mary also.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's
2 quick things.
Isn't it to me, it's just super rewarding and kind of gives you like a little pat on the back that you're doing something right. When, for example, the other day we were at my grandma's house, so my daughter's great grandma, and every time we go home to the farm, she lives pretty close by, we try to go, because I just know that every time my daughter comes in and sees my grandma, her great grandma, they have a little connection there. And I don't know how many other nieces and nephews come in and say hi, but boy, great grandma or grandma just lights up like a Christmas tree. The other day we were just hanging out, sitting there, and I'm kind of working on some puzzles and stuff, and our daughter starts going, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you." And she sounds like a spitting image of my grandma when she says the rosary before Mass.
Wow.
It's the same monotone kind of, that my grandma says, and I was like, God, that's cute. It's just like...
It's amazing.
Yeah, right. And I don't know, I'm just amazed at 2.5 years old that she can basically say that before a meal prayer all by herself. I'll say, "Hey, let's pray," and then I'll be like, "Well, you start it off," And she starts it off, and she can basically say the whole thing, and I'm like, man. But today, we want to teach her that it's also not just a thing we just do. Today I asked her, "Well, why are we praying?" "I don't know." I'm like, really? Then I, go on to say,
right.
Well, we're praying because we're thanking Jesus that we have a warm place to eat our food. And kind of just looks at you, but she knows what she's thinking.
Yeah.
And the next time I ask her, she'll remember.
Yes.
But so persistence.
Yes.
In the faith, I think, is key.
Yes.
I also heard one thing the other day, and we'll kind of wrap up with this, I think, is that as a faith-filled person, whether you're Catholic or Lutheran or Methodist or whatever, the likelihood of your children keeping your faith increases significantly when you have like faith-filled traditions and you do things that are oriented around the faith. So like there's some of the reasons might be, for example, this is a pretty broad one, but if you have this big celebration at Christmas where you open presents, guess what? At Christmas time, your kids are going to be focused on presents. But if you, for example, and I heard this in another podcast, but if you, in the morning when you wake up at Christmas time, you grab a cross and you do a procession, to the Christmas tree where you will be opening presents, at that time you sing a song, glorifying God, that your children are going to see that, and they're not going to want to miss out on that. So they're not going to leave their faith because they're tied to the traditions of their family. And so the more you can incorporate your faith into your daily living, the more likely that your family and will stay intact with the faith.
Yeah, I think you hit a great point, Joe. When the father is actively involved in the faith, the chances of the children staying in it are astronomically higher than if it's just the mother. Yep.
Yeah. And one of the things that we do at maybe you should try this. It's super cute. But so at bedtime, my grandma on the other side of the family, on my dad's side, gave me this little wooden box that has an M on it for Mettler. But it was made by her cousin or something like that, and she has it. But she gave it to us / to give to Sophia. And if you go to the Hurley's bookstore here in Fargo, they have all the prayer cards in there with the saints on there and everything. This box fits the prayer cards like to a T. And so we have 20 of these prayer cards, and we'll sit there in the night and like, "Hey, you want to do saints?" And our daughter will be like, "Yeah." And sometimes she'll say, "No, I don't want to today." But when she does, we whip them out, and she's just like, I'm like, "Pick one." "Oh, St. George." And we'll pick St. George, and she'll be like, hand it to my wife and be like, "Read it."
Yeah, right.
But the one part that I think is super awesome is that the one she always wants first is Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah. It will hold them all out, and she's like, "What do you want?" "I want Jesus." And then she'll find the Jesus prayer card.
That's beautiful.
Has Our Father on the back.
Wow.
And so that's almost, as of recently anyways, that's the one she always chooses first.
Yes.
And I don't know.
That's beautiful.
My heart melts every time that happens.
It makes a guy feel good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And what do they say? The faith is caught, not taught.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever you do, the kids see that, right? Or whatever you do out in your workplace, coworkers see that. So then, all right. So then they're seeing that Joe is a Catholic and he's doing this, right? Oh, my dad is a Catholic. He did that, right? Your children watch you, what they do.
Yeah. But
and good or bad, they see it.
Yep. And my dad did a phenomenal job of leading by example. He may not have always expressed in language, this is why we do things, or this is why, know. But, and so I'm trying to improve upon that a little bit. You'll learn from your dad. You'll learn to try to do things, just a little bit better, even though you did things well. And, try to keep it going, because it's just, as you kind of see your aunts and uncles, you see some of them falling away, your cousins falling away, your faith, and you're like, no, man, I've got to get it going at least one more generation,
Yeah.
Like, what can you do to keep that generation strong? And,
yes.
And that's awesome. So, anyways, that's probably enough for today. Hope you learned a little bit about a dad's perspective in homeschooling as far as the working parent. Kind of went off on some different segues in terms of just parenting in general, but all good conversation. If you have any particular questions for Vince, we're planning on having his wife and him back here at some point. I'd love to have some kind of Q&A a little bit from my listeners to be able to ask them. That'd be awesome. So shoot me some questions at @homegrownfam. Sounds pretty good, Vince?
Sounds great.
@gmail.com. You can always follow me at @homegrownfam at the Instagram. I usually don't post a whole lot of things until it comes to the growing season. And that we're kind of getting into the mix of it. So on to the new season, and here's to a fruitful harvest.
Thank you very much, Joe.
All right, thanks, Vince.
Bye.